Sign it, Sarah. We are all here just wanting what is best for the boy, Barbara whispered, pushing the custody surrender agreement across the oak dining table. 12 of my husband's relatives filled my living room. No one said a word. I looked up at Michael, my husband. He was looking down, staring intently at his cold cup of coffee. His hands were tightly clasped together. Just 6 months ago, we were still a normal family. But then Barbara, my mother-in-law, moved in under the excuse of helping to take care of 14-month-old Leo. And since that day, I gradually became a psychopath in the eyes of my own husband. Sarah, you are sick, Uncle Thomas spoke up, his voice full of pity. The times you forgot to lock the gate, the times you mixed dangerous objects into Leo's toy basket. Everyone can see that you are exhausted. Temporarily surrendering custody to Barbara is the safest solution right now. I looked down at the stack of documents. On top was a medical record for postpartum depression with signs of paranoia that Barbara had begged Michael to take me to get examined for, clipped together with a document drafted by a lawyer. The content was very clear. I had to move out of the house, and every week I would only be allowed to visit my child for 2 hours under the supervision of my mother-in-law. She had designed a perfect family intervention. Isolating me, brainwashing her son, and using the pressure of the entire extended family to crush a mother's last bit of strength. I slowly picked up the ballpoint pen. The corners of Barbara's lips twitched upward. She quickly covered her mouth and cleared her throat to hide her triumphant smile. Michael looked up, exhaling a breath as if relieved of a heavy burden. Before I sign, I said, my voice strangely calm, can I show everyone one last video of Leo, just to keep the memory before I have to move out? Barbara narrowed her eyes slightly, a flash of wariness crossing them, but she was busy playing the role of a magnanimous grandmother in front of the relatives. Of course, sweetheart, do whatever makes you feel better. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. Without opening the photo gallery, I swiped the screen and tapped the screen mirroring icon to project onto the 65-inch smart television hanging on the wall. The television screen blinked black for a beat. Instead of warm family footage, a wide-angle frame with a slightly bluish tint appeared. In the bottom right corner was a blinking timestamp, 10:24 in the morning, October 14th. It was the interface of a security camera. Barbara's composure instantly evaporated. She sprang up from the sofa so fast that she knocked the entire tray of cookies onto the carpet. Sarah, what is this? Turn it off. She frantically lunged forward, grabbed the television remote, and pressed buttons wildly. But because the image was being transmitted directly from my phone, the remote was completely useless. Michael, unplug the television. Her phone has been hacked. But the footage had already begun to play. Everyone in the room fell silent. On the screen was the kitchen space. I had just placed Leo's bowl of mashed carrots on the table when the doorbell rang. I turned my back and walked out to the hallway. A few seconds later, Barbara stepped into the frame. She walked quickly to the side of Leo's high chair. She pulled a hard plastic bead out of her coat pocket, the perfect size to block the airway of a 14-month-old child. She pressed the bead deep into the middle of the carrot bowl, used a spoon to stir lightly to hide it, then stepped back, turning her face toward the window. "Oh my God, what is that?" Aunt Susan exclaimed, her body shrinking back slightly into her chair. Uncle Thomas leaned forward, squinting as he stared at the screen. "Barbara, what did you just put into the boy's food?" Michael blinked rapidly. He turned to look at his mother, trying to find a logical reason. "Mom, what was that? Cough medicine. Or did you drop a button? Something is wrong with this camera angle," Barbara snapped, her voice cracking. "This bitch is using video editing technology. Can't everyone see that?" I didn't say a word. I swiped the screen, switching to the second video. 3:15 in the afternoon, November 2nd. The outdoor temperature that day was 40 degrees Fahrenheit, about 4 degrees Celsius. Winter winds blew in gusts. In the video, I was carrying a laundry basket walking upstairs. Barbara came out of the kitchen. She looked around, confirming that I was out of sight. Then, she walked over to the front door. Everyone in the living room held their breath as they saw her not only unlock it, but also deliberately push the wooden door wide open. Leo was sitting on the rug playing with blocks. Seeing the light from the door, he curiously toddled over to crawl toward the front steps. Instead of closing the door, Barbara circled through the hallway, went out the back door, and left the house, abandoning her grandson who was gradually crawling toward the edge of the freezing steps right next to the street. Aunt Susan covered her mouth with both hands. Uncle Thomas turned his face away, muttering a curse. The scene on the screen was the cruel truth behind the day Michael frantically rushed home from work, so a police car parked on the front lawn, and Barbara was covering her face crying, telling him, "I warned you." Sarah left the door wide open again. She really has lost her mind. The television screen returned to black. I placed my phone down on the table. A dry thud echoed through the terrifying silence. The camera was hidden inside the smoke detector on the ceiling that I hired a contractor to replace last month. I spoke up in a flat tone. It doesn't have a flashing light. That is the only reason a careful person like you didn't spot it. Turns out I am not crazy at all. You told me. Michael's voice groaned out like a man deprived of oxygen. He stepped back, staring blankly at the mother he had always worshipped. You told me you saw Sarah open the door with your own eyes. The fear on Barbara's face vanished, replaced by frantic anger. She set me up. Barbara pointed her finger straight at my face and screamed. She is a venomous snake. Susan Thomas, why is everyone looking at me like that? I did all of these things for our family. Uncle Thomas slowly stood up, reaching for his coat. He looked at Barbara with unconcealed disgust. You really are sick, Barbara. Don't ever call my family again. He walked straight out the door. Barbara frantically rushed over, trying to grab Aunt Susan's sleeve. Susan, you know how I am. I only wanted what was best for the boy. Susan jerked her hand back violently as if she had just touched fire. Stay away from me. One by one, the relatives who had just come to corner me now stood up in unison. They avoided Barbara's eyes, pushing past one another to walk quickly out the front door, without a single word of goodbye. In less than 2 minutes, the cramped living room was left with only 3 people. Seeing all the relatives leave, Barbara's victim mask completely shattered. She snapped her head toward Michael, her fury exploding. I did it to save you, she yelled in his face. Are you blind? She will destroy your life. I sacrificed my entire youth to raise you, and now you are going to stand by and watch her throw me out on the street. Michael's eyes were bloodshot, his chest heaving violently. You almost killed my son. I did it so you could get custody of your child. Barbara shrieked, slamming her hand on the table. You idiot, did you really think you could beat her in court? I did all of this for you. The entire room fell into dead silence. That exact sentence completely crushed Michael. He took another step back, clutching his head with both hands, unable to utter another word. The woman standing in front of him was not his mother, but a stranger harboring a terrifying malice. I slowly picked up the stack of custody surrender papers, tore it in half, then tore it in quarters. I threw the scraps down onto the wooden table. You have exactly 30 minutes to go upstairs, pack your things, and get the hell out of my house, I said, my voice ice-cold and decisive. If you are still here after 30 minutes, the police will come to see this video. Barbara stood frozen. She looked at me, then looked at her son. Seeing Michael turn his face away, her legs gave out. She collapsed onto the carpet, sobbing hysterically. A pathetic, genuine, and desperate cry. But there was no one left to reach out a hand to help her anymore. Michael turned to me, his shoulders slumped. For the first time in 6 months, he looked at me with eyes full of panic and utter remorse. Sarah, I am sorry. Good Lord, I am truly sorry. He reached his hand out, trembling. I stepped back, decisively avoiding his touch. I had gotten what I needed, safety for my son, but the sleepless nights doubting my own mind, the horrifying isolation over the past half-year, could not be resolved with a simple apology. You did not believe me, Michael. You chose to believe that the woman who gave birth to your child was a lunatic who deserved to be stripped of her right to be a mother. I looked straight into his eyes. Your mother is leaving right now. As for you, tonight you are sleeping in the living room. Tomorrow morning, we will call my lawyer to talk about the divorce papers. Without waiting for his reaction, I turned on my heel and walked up the stairs. As I gently pushed open the door to Leo's room, the quiet and warm space inside stood in stark contrast to the wreckage of the family downstairs. I walked over to the crib, leaning down to look at my sleeping son. The boy's steady breathing was the most peaceful sound in the world. I reached out and softly stroked his baby hair. Downstairs echoed the sound of heavy footsteps, the sound of a suitcase dragging across the floor, and the suppressed crying of a man who had just lost everything. They had used the pressure of the crowd to back a mother into a corner. They forgot a very basic rule. When you try to rip a child from a mother's hands, you have single-handedly given her the reason to burn down everything you have.